Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I've left it a little dark in this room because this is a dark subject. The crimes committed by Sherburne County employees against this country and myself are extensive. I don't believe I'll have time to cover them all in detail today. But I would go back to a day in late June of 2022 when I was arrested falsely for carrying a machete, where they claimed that it was a assault weapon, was the word they used, when according to the Minnesota statute it clearly was not. Yet anyway, on that day I was brought to the Sherburne County Jail, where the first meal they fed me was laced with hallucinogenic drugs. I can't be certain which hallucinogenic drugs they were laced with, or it was laced with, I should say. But I would guess psilocybin, as I have tried that in the past and it had a similar effect. They refused to do a drug test, which I had thought that I may have been drugged before I had gotten there. Yet, after they had drugged me again later in 2023, when I was there, I became certain that they had drugged me with hallucinogens in 2022 as well. Because whatever I had been drugged with before I arrived there, it was not making me hallucinate. And whatever they drugged me with at Sherburne County Jail clearly made me hallucinate and see lots of pretty rainbows. But the fact that the Sherburne County Jail staff refused to drug test me either way is a problem that I would insist they should have resolved the first time. But not only at Sherburne County Jail did they drug me with hallucinogenic drugs, they assaulted me with directed energy weapons through the walls and floor while I was there. Which, if you're familiar with such things, those can cause very detrimental effects on the human physiology. For me, they were mostly annoying given the parts of my body they targeted, yet it was still inhumane torture for them to do that to me and then deny any involvement in such acts. Truly, this is a problem that Sherburne County faces and something that they need to address, which they have refused to. As I have previously stated, all of my charges in this arrest, where I was accused of possession of an assault weapon, were dropped. Those charges were dismissed because I clearly was not guilty, even though the police department tried to fabricate false evidence against me with fake video footage afterward. They still didn't have a case. And not only that, the Sherburne County social worker, Gracie Enerson, perjured herself by saying I had threatened her when all I had said to her was that she deserved to lose her job and that her ethical standards were below par, which they clearly are. And yet, in a civil commitment case, it was used against me saying that I had threatened my social worker, Gracie Enerson. And then in a recommitment case, my new social worker again stated that I had threatened Gracie Enerson, claiming that I was a danger because of this, as if I had threatened her with violence in some way, when clearly I had not. And I had even recorded Gracie Enerson admitting I had threatened her with no violence of any sort. And my brother had even sent that to Sherburne County, and so they had that as evidence against Gracie Enerson and the perjury she had committed initially. And yet they still recommitted me, using that as evidence against me by claiming that I had threatened her. And the fact that they used directed energy weapons in the mental health facilities as well to create and fabricate symptoms of mental illness. Not only did they use these things on myself, I observed that they were using them against other patients as well. It's just simply that most of those other patients were not as well educated as myself and were oblivious to the plight that they were enduring. And the truth is, the mental health system itself has gone wildly out of control. But for now, I'm focusing on the problems with Sherburne County. Despite the fact that I have all of the evidence necessary to charge and convict Gracie Anderson of perjury, multiple counts of which the Sherburne County deputy, or sergeant, I should say, that has been assigned to the case has refused to take any action on the matter. I have already sent enough evidence to Sergeant Kelly Soban that she could have Gracie Anderson arrested and convicted of perjury, which is punishable by up to 5 years in prison, if I'm not mistaken. And yet, they are apparently such a close-knit community that they torture people and lie about them profusely in order to ruin their lives to protect themselves. That is what I have observed personally, and these are facts, and I do not exaggerate. In my previous video, I claimed there was a man that was only guilty of misdemeanor. Well, in fact, I don't think he was guilty of anything. I have since researched the matter further. It does turn out that he was, in fact, charged with a felony, threats of violence, which is, in fact, a felony. Yet his case was also dismissed, and yet they held him for over 2 years. He's still got about 6 months left. They were gonna give him 3 more, but he's all excited because he gets out in 6 months. I wouldn't be excited. I'd still be pissed because his case got dismissed because they must have decided they didn't have anything on him either, and yet he's still done 2 years already. And he was charged with threats of violence, which is a felony, yet he didn't actually harm anyone, and he did not get a jury trial. He was going to take his case to jury trial, and they did not give him that. But speaking of threats of violence, I had multiple people threaten to kill me, and when I reported that a woman had threatened to kill me, and she'd even done it in front of multiple witnesses, they said that I was paranoid, that, oh, that couldn't have happened. It's impossible for someone to have threatened to kill you. And the Stearns County deputy that arrived on that scene told me that that wasn't even a crime. He said, oh, just because she said she was going to kill you, oh, that's not a crime. That's not a crime. She said she was going to kill you, that's not even threats of violence. That's not even a crime. It depends on how you say it. It depends on if there's intent to follow through. It depends on if she really meant it or not. It sounded like she meant it to me. I felt threatened. The woman said she was going to kill me, and it was in a treatment center. And she did it during the middle of group after I had called the police on her initially because she was harassing me. And they refused to do anything about that, too. The staff at the treatment facility allowed her to berate me incessantly all day. I was just trying to ignore her and stay away from her, and that is my phone again. But I was just trying to stay away from this woman, and she kept harassing me all day and would not leave me alone, and then she threatened to kill me, and the Stearns County Sheriff's Department refused to do anything. And they claimed there was no evidence. That treatment facility had audio surveillance. They could have provided the surveillance to the deputies, and they refused to cooperate. And the woman that was running the group where the girl threatened to kill me right in the middle of group denied knowledge of any of it. They covered the whole thing up. And I'm not even getting into the reasons as to why these people were treating me this way in the first place right now. But let's just say, in the past, they've done such things to protect child molesters. And that's a fact too, but that's not a subject I want to get on right now. But At this point, they were protecting some other people that had committed some very serious crimes. And in the end, it does tie back to the child molesters that they were protecting in the first place. But I will not go into the specifics of that matter at this time. At this point, I just want to make the point that these people, even though I have all of the evidence that proves their crimes, law enforcement has refused to act against them, and yet they have gone out of their way to destroy my life completely. I lost my apartment. I almost lost everything I owned. If I hadn't been able to get my property into a storage container, I would have lost everything. And like I said, I lost a year of my life because of all of this. And really, it was because I reported the use of domestic terrorists using directed energy weapons in the first place. And ultimately, they were doing that, not necessarily intentionally, in such a way that was helping child molesters get away with crimes committed over 20 years ago. And like I said, it's a long story. I should just stay off the topic of child molesters, but it gets me a little too excited to even think about what caused all this 20 years ago, what got the ball rolling. But the fact that they have continued to harass me and make my life miserable and unlivable, despite the fact that I did everything right, I did not make a single mistake once, and I had all of the evidence I needed to prove my case. They would not let me submit my evidence, and they fabricated their own and lied and cheated and did everything that goes against the Constitution of this country and broke so many laws that they all belong in prison. And I just don't even know what else to say at this point. I'm getting a little too worked up. I'm getting a little too excited, and without adding the information about the child molesters I reported 20 years ago, I guess I'm just going to have to stop here. Have a nice day.